we promised a little travel diary. I'll read you a note from 2020 when Occupy Wall Street co-founder Michael White wrote that, quote, rejecting Davos is easy when one hasn't been invited. Now that I have a chance to go, I want to discover its revolutionary potential. So, Ben, when you hear that sentence read, do you feel a special kinship with the co-founder of Occupy Wall Street, Mr. Michael White there?
Um, just a hilarious headline. Yes, I did get an invitation to go to Davos. As you might imagine, AI was sort of a big theme, and so I would,
Mhm.
so I had a chance to be involved in some sessions, including some ones I can't talk about because they were sort of like totally off the record and with sort of very senior folks, and um, I had to take it because it was actually a year ago. I was in another group chat. We were talking about it when Davos was going on, and Davos is always sort of a punching bag, and
Yep.
it's something that's very easy to criticize and critique. And now I'm sounding like Michael White here.
You just had to
And
discover
so
its
we were in a group saying
revolutionary
like,
potential.
we're like, look, this thing's been going on for years. It's like it probably jumped the shark like multiple times, but it's like we're like, if we should go at least once just to
Yeah.
sort of like see it, like what is it actually like. And so when I got the invitation, I that was in my head. I'm like, I'm gonna have to go. There's some aspects of this that are
Life is short,
against they're
man. Check
against
it
many
out.
things. I do worry about this sort of like forgetting about the common person, these big people wanting to make decisions in their life, like
Mm,
the WEF
hopelessly
founder
out of touch,
Klaus or
sure.
whatever it is, like he's like this this boogeyman that makes these pronouncements of like global government and like we have to make people like stop drinking coffee or whatever it is, that are
Yeah.
just so deeply objectionable to me. But as a sociological experiment and for the content, I needed to go.
Exactly. I mean, look, we have a lot of we do have some listeners who have been to Davos, but
Oh
legions
no,
of
the worst thing
people
going there is me feeling these anti-elitist sort of like,
in your bones.
this sort of aspects. Yeah, Shekari's an outsider. Like I'm on the internet. I'm one of the revolutionaries coming in and breaking down all these institutions. It was disturbing the number of places and things that I went, and it's like, oh, love Shekari. Oh, huge fan. Oh, as I had some dinner. Oh, I'm super honored to have you here. I've been reading it for years. It's really important to our thinking about XYZ. I'm like, oh my God. I
Yeah.
did.
Well, that's
I,
the thing. I don't wanna downplay the accomplishments and expertise in our audience because anytime we discuss one of these arcane topics that's outside our lane of expertise, we have so many people who write in who are some of the smartest people in the world explaining the topic to us. So I'm sure there are lots of people who are quite familiar with the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos. But in
so
terms of
here's what I'd say, sort of big picture. My big
okay.
picture takeaway. You know, it's a good conference. Like it's so number one, the WF is just like fabulously wealthy off of this thing because what happens is you have all these companies that have to pay a lot of money to be WF members. That's sort of ground one, and they have to pay these huge fees to sort of get to this conference. Why do they do that? Because everyone else does it. It's one of the
Mhm.
most powerful examples of network effects that you've ever seen. So you have this physical real world conference that makes all this money, has huge profit margins, despite the fact there's no expense spared. Like there's a whole entire temporary building that's sort of put up for this whole thing. Like everything is like first class. Like it's super nice, and yet they're making astronomical amounts of money
What is
because
super
everyone pays to
nice?
be there.
Are we
Everything.
talking about
The food's
food?
nice. The
Okay.
drinks are nice. The facilities are nice. Everything's nice. And the reason they pay is because everyone else pays. Everyone else is there. If you are in B2B, if you're a business that is selling to other businesses, you're kind of insane not to go. You get you
Mm.
like and so you because part of what plays into this is it's a pain in the ass to get to, right? That's why everyone flies their private jets there hilariously, right? Because it's like up in the mountains in Switzerland. So me being a peon had to fly into Zurich and take a train, it like switch trains and get
Yep.
up there and
That
sort of
was
do
on my list of
XYZ.
questions.
So what that means is you have all these executives and you have the most senior like CEOs, or like there's a whole council that's like CEOs that like is like that's like well, I'll get to this in a moment. Everyone's there, and because it's such a pain to get there, they're there for multiple days. If you're gonna go, you
Mhm.
might as well go. And so you
Hunker
can get
down, sure.
meetings with basically anyone, like, because they have open time and they're there to meet people. They're there to talk. And so I can and you have this very so the second thing is it's like multiple conferences in one. So there's the public conference that everyone sees, and it's all these like grand things. It's always about like this year was all AI stuff, and I chaired some town hall about how do we restore trust in technology, blah 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 blah. It's like
Great.
whatever, like right. But then
No
there's
greater problem facing all of us than disinformation
that's
and
right,
misinformation
yes,
right now. I'm
that's
glad you
right.
could anchor that
Just
conversation
just
for
really
the
class.
world leaders.
So I mean, what just as a side note on that, one of the things about Davos is it's one of the most distinctly European conferences I've gone to. In that, in sort of every discussion, even though there's tons of Americans there, the Americans all feel like usurpers in a very sort of tangible way that's hard to
Mm,
articulate. And so I was like in one, and someone like brings up something about free speech. And everyone's like, "What? What's that?" It's just sort of like it's hard to articulate, but it feels European, and maybe sort of this like European. I think is more overtly classist. Not to say class doesn't exist in America, but America we just kind of like raise your middle finger to it to a certain extent, and
yep.
like no, I'm some scrappy guy on the internet, like, and I value that. Here it's like no, you have like different color badges based on your status, and it's like everywhere it's like you have XYZ badge, you can't get in here. You're scanning your badge
Right.
constantly to like get
I'm
in and
not
out of
gonna
stuff.
ask what color your badge was. I've read that that's a very loaded question
I had
and
the
that
white
there's a
badge with
lot
the
of
blue stripe, but
status.
I
Okay.
had the top badge. But even within the top badge, you're still limited on like what you can get into certain places or whatever, right? And
Gotcha.
so
Okay.
there's all these parallel things going on. So there's the one on the surface that is like sort of for public consumption. Then there's like other sessions that are like what's the word? Chatham House rules, whatever it is, like where you
Chatham
could
House.
talk,
Yep.
yeah. And then there's ones that are completely off the record that you can't even say, who was there, who you're doing sort of XYZ. And the content and response, needless to say, changes based on these things. So the public ones are basically what you get on the tin. They're super fluffy, sort of XYZ. They're about the theme of the day. It's all
Mhm.
generally one view of the world, which is whatever is the current thing for the like globalist elite of the world. Like everyone kind of agrees on everything, right? Then you get into other ones where, particularly when you get more senior people, these are companies, very nuts and bolts, like AI. How do I increase my margin? Right? Like that's
Okay.
the question that they're interested in. Like what open versus closed, not in a philosophical perspective, but what actually makes sense for sort of my business going forward. And then there's maybe the deepest level is like where you have the highest level policymakers in the world, and you have CEOs, and you have and this is actually real value. You have like people from China, and you have people from Europe, and you have people from India, and you have people from the US all in the same room with their like company counterparts and actually hashing stuff out. Like now,
Right.
obviously, it's not purely private because everyone's in the room, but it is sort of a place where that sort of conversation can and does happen. And so that's like so that we have three levels of
That's the
conferences now.
aggressively off the record scenario, right?
Right. We have the public, we have sort of the hardcore business, and then we have like the like cross multilateral sort of discussing sort of issues. That's
Mhm.
all in the WEF sort of buildings. There's meanwhile, this is the weirdest thing. So there is a road in Davos called Promenade or the Promenade or whatever it is. I would
Okay.
imagine if you're in Davos normally, which is like a ski resort, it's a bunch of town. There's like, there's all a bunch of luxury stores. It's like Aspen, but in Europe, right? And so
Mhm.
you have all, all these sorts of things, restaurants. When you're there, not only are all these stores and restaurants and bars and coffee shops taken over by companies, they actually put up signs, and they're like permanent seeming signs. So it's like, this is the Accenture
Right.
office. This is the Citibank office. This is the IBM office. This is the Intel, like
This is the
the
travel
Microsoft,
agency
Meta,
that is
right?
now the Salesforce
And it's
suite or
so weird
whatever it
because
may be.
like this is part of like just the extravagant amounts of money that are spent here. They're not like hanging banners over the cover.
Mm.
It looks like a permanent sign. I don't think it's
Great.
permanent. It'd be weird to go to
Well,
Davos
it
and there's
can't
like the
be.
Accenture like coffee shop. Maybe it is. I don't know. No,
The
but
entire town is just
there's
permanently
temporary buildings that
colonized
are
by
put up that
Accenture.
are very nice. Yeah. And so that is probably the part where that's why the companies pay the big bucks.
Okay.
Everyone in B2B is there, and there's just meetings and coffees and deals being done all day, every day. And that's sort of like going. That's like the fourth parallel conference that's sort of happening. And the fifth one is, look, you have all these nerds who become the elites and go there, and now they got to go and act like stupid college students and go to like these crazy parties every night. Like,
Mhm.
and like I only went to one, and it was so dumb. Like, it was like being at a house party, but in like this very nice hotel, and like wine everywhere, right? Like, you like I think it's the famous, like the Anthony Scaramucci like wine tasting party. It's just the most stupidest thing I've ever been to. I'm like, this is why it was like a house party. It was ridiculous.
Mm.
You can barely move. You're all scrunched in. Everyone's getting sloshed. Like, just but that hey, there's the famous stories about the illicit, things that happen in Davos. Like,
What
that's when it's
happens
all
in
happening.
Davos
What
stays in
happens in Davos
Davos.
stays in Davos. Yeah. So it's like this
Anthony
5
Scaramucci
conferences.
wine tasting.
Yeah, you can search for it. It's a famous sort of thing. Apparently, they ran out of wine earlier this year. I don't
They
know because I
did,
stayed.
by 11 p.m.
Yeah, I stayed for 15 minutes and then bailed. So it was definitely not my scene.
Come
Um,
on. You gotta do it for the content.
that's
God damn
why
it,
I
you let
went.
us down. We're trying to launch a
I
a
had
YouTube
no
channel right
I had
now.
no desire to go. I went for the content, and then I'm like, okay, I've seen it. I've seen,
We
I've
can only
conquered. I
do
did
so
not
much.
conquer, and then I left. So you have basically like 5 conferences or 5 parallel things happening at the same time in the same place with all the most like powerful people in the world. And
Okay.
probably the reason, and so the public part is by far the least interesting and least compelling part, and the
Mhm.
silliest part and the least consequential part, and rightly mocked. The other stuff is, in some respects, the part that people are correct to be scared about, right? Like, the powers that be in a ski resort,
An
like making
actual
plans about the
meeting
world.
of the Illuminati? Sure.
Right.
This
Exactly,
is the
exactly.
closest you come to
That
that paranoid
it
vision.
really is. It really is. And so, but that part is, it's also kind of cool, right? You can see why people want to go, and people probably don't talk about it. From my perspective, I went, I saw. That's what I wanted to do. Would I
Mhm.
go back? Maybe, probably. Honestly, it was fun. Like, some of the dinners were really fun. You meet some really cool people and you have cool conversations. If they get mad because I just podcasted this and don't invite me again, it's okay. I will be fine.
Your life will go on.
My life
Yeah.
will go on.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading about a Salesforce party that Sting performed at. He performed "Every Breath You Take" and Roxanne, and to me, it sounded like NBA All-Star Weekend for like
That's
55-year-old
right.
rich people.
Yeah, that's basically it.
And I've been at that party, like an Adidas party where Jadakiss is performing, and everybody's
I
just
mean,
sort of milling around and
the other thing
networking.
about, you have lots of rich people and powerful people, but you also have, they do try to reach out to younger companies and younger people and stuff along those lines.
Mhm.
And which is great. I like the thought. The problem is the sensation of striving is like omnipresent, right? Like,
Yeah,
everyone,
skin crawling.
yeah, it's like everyone is there to impress and to sort of get ahead and get a deal, sort of XYZ. There is a definite missing layer of authenticity by and
Mhm.
large. But the more private you get, or perhaps the more drunk people get, that is there. And you can get it, just because when you're in person with someone, it can be. I can imagine being in these B2B business meetings in these sort of on the promenade in these weirdly signed stores. Like, that's why you go, right? It's a chance to sit down with your CEO counterpart in a way that's off the record. It's not in the books. You just ran into each other. Like, there's a lot.
Sure.
If you want serendipity, like, I was talking to a company that they're in a high compliance sort of area. Everything they do, like, everyone comes to their office to be tracked XYZ, and this is a chance to talk to someone, and it's off the record. You just ran into them on the street, like, and
Right.
so those serendipitous encounters happen all the time, scheduled or unscheduled.
All you have to do is drop 20 grand and hop on like a
Oh, it's more than
10-hour
that.
flight.
It's more than that. No, I think the entry fee, I don't know this for sure, but I think the membership to WF runs in like the hundreds of thousands. And then
Right.
I think the price per participant is in the tens of thousands. I didn't, I was, I
You were
was asked
invited.
to come on, yeah, to moderate some of these sessions about AI, things on those lines. So I did, as I always do, I paid for my hotel, I paid for my travel. I did not have to pay an entry fee. I would not have paid $50,000 or whatever it was to go. I can
Probably not
promise you
worth
that.
it, but,
Yeah.
well, question for you. I just
But
some
it
random
very, I feel like we had to come out and be honest about it, because there is a deep sense of shame that yes, I went to Davos. I was one of those people. I have to
Well,
admit.
look, We promised people that you would be getting read on this YouTube
I
channel,
am
and so
blushing.
here
No,
we
it's
are.
true. No,
You
like,
are literally
this is my
blushing as I look at you.
actually big picture. This has been one of the honestly, it sounds how do I say this without sounding like a jerk? One of the big challenges to Checkary has been going from starting with like 300 Twitter followers, no one knew who I was, just lobbing grenades on the internet,
Mhm.
to everyone knows who I am. I walk into a room, way more people know me than I know them, and I can talk to the Netflix CEO for an interview, right?
Right.
Like I can reach out to sort of XYZ. And so the way I've tried to resolve those two things, I think you make a mistake if you try to always stay the way you are. You have to acknowledge differences. It's like what I talk about getting old, right? The most annoying and like cringe-worthy thing is the
Sad.
40-year-old that tries to act like they're 25. And,
Right.
and and it's not just cringe to observe, it's sad for them because different aspects of life have different parts, and you will find so much more fulfillment by being in the moment. And being in the moment is not just like your present circumstances, it's accepting that I'm a 43-year-old, right?
Mhm.
That's sort of who I am. I'm not going to go to some stupid house party, wine party sort of thing.
You wanna Netflix and chill, after a long day at Davos,
Well,
you wanna just kick
with
back.
Davos, that comment gets a little dicey. There's articles you can search up about that
That's
did
true.
not apply to me, for the record. Um, so so
Uh,
and so the way I resolved that from a trajectory content perspective was the trajectory interviews, where it's like, oh
okay.
wait, the difference with me when I started trajectory to now, I still try to write as an outsider. I try not rely on inside information or any of that sort of thing about that influencing when I write. I want everyone to believe that what I write is my opinion. It's what I think. And usually I wait. Like I was actually annoyed at myself because I wrote about this WWE thing too fast and I wrote a poor blurb about it. But like I
Mhm.
wait and I'm gonna deliver Ben Thompson's perspective and it's completely authentic to me. But at the same time, how can I both leverage and acknowledge my different status in the industry? Well, I will do these interviews with folks, but I'm not going to do an interview and just pick out quotes to put in an article to spin my point of view. If you come on Trajectory, we're posting the whole thing. We're going to post the
Right.
transcript, we're going to post the podcast, and the information I get from Greg Peters is the information my audience get from Greg Peters. I might be more famous now, I might have more access now, but I still, maybe this is my lying to myself, see myself as a man of the people, as a man of my audience. We're just out here with takes on tech companies. And
Yeah.
so if I get access to more information, my readers get access to more information. And that's why I'm on here talking about going to Davos. I don't want to be the sort of person I go to Davos and I don't talk about it, XYZ.
Just furtively go, yeah.
Yeah, no, I went, I admit it, like for all the implications of that, but I'm sitting here on this podcast telling you what it was like. And you know,
Yeah, look,
I'm
and
respecting off the record rules, but beyond that, this is what it was like.